Hello everyone, I'm Tony from Arkitect Fitness, and in this video we are going to be talking about how to track your food when you go out to eat. And at Arkitect Fitness we employ what's called a flexible dieting strategy. And basically, if you're not familiar with that, what that is we assign clients a specific amount of macronutrients to eat every day. Macronutrients are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And those macronutrients contain calories. So if you hit the specific amount of macro targets that we have set for you, you will have by default eaten a specific amount of calories as well. So it's very similar to your standard calorie-based diet. However, we are taking a closer look at what those calories are made up of. Now, flexible dieting states that it doesn't matter how you get to those macros as long as you're hitting those specific target macro numbers each day. So for example, if you were to eat a banana versus an apple, although they have slightly different nutrient profiles as far as vitamins and minerals, if they have roughly the same amount of carbohydrates to your body, it really doesn't make a specific difference, especially when we're talking about things like losing body fat, which is a very common goal for most of our clients. And the really nice thing about this dieting strategy is that you learn about what's in your food. You learn about portion control and portion sizes and how to eyeball things. You learn that you can indulge in foods that you enjoy as long as you're not overdoing it. But a big issue that a lot of people run into is when they go to dine out. They say, I have no idea how to track this, so they just go overboard and say, I'm not even gonna worry about my macros, I'm not even gonna worry about tracking my food, and they just go nuts. And in this video, we're gonna give you 5 strategies on how to effectively stay on track when you are dining out. Tip number 1 is to look up the place you are dining out at ahead of time and pick out your meal ahead of time. Look up their menu and pre-track that meal. There is absolutely no rule that says you have to wait until after you eat something before you track it. In fact, we highly encourage people pre-track foods, and that way they have a set up game plan. This is really no different than having a workout already written up before you go to the gym, instead of getting to the gym, looking around and going, oh, I think I'm gonna do this today. Look up what you want to eat ahead of time, put that into your food tracker, see what that does for your macro budget for the day, and then work the rest of your day around that pre-tracked meal. This is also very similar to going into the grocery store with a planned grocery list and budget, because a lot of times, and I'm sure you've been in this boat before, you go in, you kind of have an idea of what you want, but you just peruse everything, and then you end up buying a lot of things that you don't really need. You spend more money than you planned to or really wanted to, and you end up with a bunch of food that's gonna be really tempting for you to overeat when you get home again. But if you go in with a plan ahead of time, it's much easier to stick to that plan and get the results that you want. So eating out is really no different than that. You can just simply look up the menu, pick something out, put it into your food tracker, and have a game plan going in. Okay, time for tip number 2, which is to save your macros for a big meal. Now, we are a result of what we habitually do. That means that a one-off decision doesn't make a huge difference in our overall results. And with that in mind, we often encourage clients to hit their daily macros, but also look at their weekly average to see if they were compliant towards their macro targets or not. So that means if I know that on a Friday night I'm gonna be going out with friends, having a big meal out, that I might wanna save some of those macros for that big meal. So I could simply cut back on how much I'm eating Monday through Friday during the day leading up to that Friday night meal out. And if I, let's say, undereat by 30 carbohydrates per day for 3 days, and then I overeat by 90 carbohydrates on that big meal out, I've effectively broken even on the week so far. And that's kind of how you want to look at your total macro compliance, is what are you doing on average? So even if you have one big meal where you might go over, if you've saved up some of those macros leading up to that, you're going to be fine. It's not a big deal. Some people refer to this as macro hoarding. I don't really like that term because I think hoarding kind of has a negative connotation to it, But really, there's no problem with having a little bit of balance in your life, where if you know you're gonna have a big meal later, just eat a little bit lighter, even if it's just earlier in that day. Maybe cut back on some of the foods you would normally have for breakfast and lunch, just so you have a little more room in your budget, if you will, for that meal out. Okay, tip number 3 is consider dining out at a chain restaurant. Now, if you're like me, and probably like most people, I do prefer local one-off restaurants. The food is usually better, the atmosphere is usually better. But if you are gonna go out and you are really serious about tracking, do consider chain restaurants, because chain restaurants have a couple distinct advantages. Number 1, their nutrition information is usually readily available on their website, so you can see exactly how much protein, carbs, fats, calories are in each dish. And also, because these businesses are so efficiently run, everything is a cost analysis for them, which means that every time they produce a certain dish, it's going to be almost exactly the same. So that means the nutrition information that you find on the web is usually going to be pretty accurate, because for them, they're not going to give you extra chicken or extra portions of sides, because it's going to affect their profit margin. So the standardization of a chain restaurant actually plays to your favor in this instance. And because a lot of the nutrition information is already available on the web, a lot of times in your favorite food tracker like MyFitnessPal or Avatar Nutrition, a lot of these chain restaurants, foods are already pre-logged into the database, so you don't have to manually put it in, which makes life a lot easier. Okay, tip number 4, which is track a generic equivalent or chain equivalent if you are dining out at a local restaurant. So there is a brand new T-Bones right here in town, and they are a local chain, if you will. I wouldn't really call them a chain. There's only a few of them in New Hampshire, and they don't have their nutrition information available on their website. But you could simply take a equivalent from a chain based on the meal that you had. So let's say you have a side of mashed potatoes with your meal. Are those mashed potatoes going to be exactly the same as the mashed potatoes at maybe Applebee's? Well, no, probably not, but they're going to be close enough. Food tracking, flexible dieting, macro tracking, whatever you want to call this strategy, it's not an exact science, and it doesn't need to be. We don't become overweight because we're not tracking things exactly. We become overweight because we're not paying attention to our nutrition at all. We habitually overeat, under-exercise, or a combination of the two. Essentially, all macro tracking and flexible dieting is saying, this is a limit. Here is your limit. Try not to go over that limit. That's it. It's very simple. And so if your tracking isn't exact, you're still going to get 90% or more of the benefit, because you're putting a hard stop to how much you're allowing yourself to eat. So tracking a generic equivalent or a chain equivalent is going to be close enough. Okay, and for our 5th and final tip, that is guesstimate. Now, this is something that becomes much easier and you'll become much better at the longer you track your food. And this is one of the reasons why we love flexible dieting. We really encourage food journaling or food tracking, because it is an extremely empowering skill for our clients to develop. I remember one evening I was at the gym and one of our clients came in and she was very frustrated with kind of getting started with macro tracking. She felt it was very overwhelming. So I sat with her and I said, tell me what you've eaten today. And she told me everything she had eaten up until that point. She had not tracked any of it. And I said, okay, based on your macro targets for today, you're gonna have about this much protein left, this much carbs left, this much fat left. And I said, put all that food that you ate today into your food tracker right now. And so she entered all of that food, and when she was done, I was only off by a couple grams on proteins, on carbs, and on fats. And she was kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe you're able to do that. And that's a skill that you get from tracking your food, from reading labels, from just paying attention and being intentional and aware of the things that you are eating. And when you go out to eat, even if you don't know how big that steak is or how many ounces of French fries you're eating, you get very good at guesstimating it. And again, it doesn't need to be exact. You just need to get yourself in the ballpark. And this is a skill you're only going to develop if you take the time to build that skill, to track your food, and to occasionally weigh some of your food depending on what it is. Also, if you're really unsure, don't be afraid to ask the waiter or waitress, how many ounces is this steak? What percent leanness is this burger? People who work at restaurants deal with people who have particular dietary needs all the time. Asking those questions is not uncommon, and even if they did think it was weird, who cares? Are you really going to abandon your goals and abandon your plan just because some stranger might think your question's a little odd? That's not a good reason. Don't be afraid to ask if you need to. Really, the whole point of flexible dieting and macro tracking is to learn how to incorporate foods you like eating into your diet. And eating out, going out to restaurants is absolutely a part of that. So don't be afraid to treat yourself. The problem with super restrictive diets, they have a benefit in that they're very simple. For example, keto, don't eat carbs. Vegan, don't eat meat. Clean eating, little ambiguous, don't eat junk food. That might depend on whose definition you're working off of. But everyone is going to probably break at some point. We only have a certain amount of willpower to continually say no to things. So flexible dieting really succeeds because it allows us to indulge in foods that we like, but not overdo it. And there's a strong educational component that comes with this process that a lot of other diets and eating strategies don't have. So hopefully this helps. If you are planning on dining out anytime soon and you are tracking your macros, use these tips. If there's anything you think I forgot or you think would be very helpful for people to know, please comment down below. I'm always looking for ways to improve myself. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. You will see me in the next one. Take care.